Hi guys, welcome to another video. Today I've got something a little bit different, and basically I woke up this morning, I looked on my phone and I found this article about this guy reckons he's found the burial location of the real life Jack the Ripper. So I rang my mate Taylor behind me there and I said, we're going to London. Right, so we're in this massive Victorian graveyard in the middle of London. Finding this guy is going to be so difficult because I don't know how many graves are here, but it's a hell of a lot of graves. So yeah, look, right in there, there's so many, and basically we're going to go around and check as many as we can, see if we can find this guy. So basically the guy we're looking for, his name is Thomas Cutbush. Now the whole thing interests me a lot, the whole Jack the Ripper thing. I look it up from time to time. I'd be quite interested to hear actually if you've heard any theories about the Jack the Ripper case. Comment below and can have a discussion about it. But yeah, this whole theory basically goes, this Cutbush guy, he was sort of like a psychopath. He was, sort of quite crazy, and basically he was arrested in 1891 for assaulting 2 women, and the last Jack the Ripper murder was actually, I think it was 1888. So after he was arrested, the murder stopped, which is quite interesting. That's why people think it was him. But it's just a fact as well. He was arrested for assaulting 2 women. It just tells you a lot about him. But yeah, he basically went to like a criminal mental asylum place called Broadmoor, I think, and he died in, I think it was 1903. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, but yeah, 1903 I think he died. And he's buried here in this cemetery in London, in his family tomb, which is the Cutbush family tomb. So yeah, we're just going to look for that. So yeah, we're going to have to look around the place. There's a few interesting sites, a few good bits of architecture. So yeah, let's have a look around. So the areas like this are quite good to check because the post that I read said that it was in one of the areas more covered in ivy. We've actually looked up that way already. That's a big tomb there, that one. John Allen. But yeah, look at this. This has got like a door on front as well. On the front. Oh, it's got a gate though. So you see in here, you can see the shelves and they're empty. And that's because back many years ago this place was abandoned and they just left, and loads of vandals came to the place and completely just wrecked it, and they took the bodies out of the graves trying to find valuable items. But apparently there wasn't actually any valuable items, so they wasted their time. But yeah, it's so disrespectful they did that. Just vandalised all the graves, took the bodies out and just laid them out. And yeah, that's why in that place it's empty, I think, because the actual coffins were taken. Which is a shame. But yeah, we're going to look down here now, see if we can find the Cutbush family grave, because yeah, look how covered in ivy these are. This is the sort of thing that we need to be on the lookout for. So there's a few graves like this that are, you know, slightly more newer looking, and some of them that I've seen have been quite maintained, because a few years ago the cemetery was bought by the council for £1, and it sort of got put back into operation after they cleaned it up. They put it back into use and people were buried here again. But now it's currently sort of like a national park, so people can come and visit, but it's mainly left abandoned with the odd bit of maintenance in the main areas, but there's a lot of areas around the sides that are completely just left. So I think those are the areas we're looking for. Right, so we found a really overgrown area here. There's so many graves. So yeah, I'm just going to go through and look at these. See, some of them are so worn away. There's no way I could possibly read that. Maybe if I got closer. No, honestly, I can't make that out. So yeah, it's so sort of looks so strange. Westrup, that says. But yeah, look how much ivy has just grown over all these. This isn't nothing on. No, you can't even read that. So we can pretty much almost guarantee the one we're looking for is going to be readable or legible. See, that's really hard to read. Yeah, I don't think it says Catbush though. But yeah, look at it. It's definitely a different sort of sight that I'm used to seeing on these explores. Avarori. It's really difficult to read. I reckon all the people that died in this area or are buried in this area are all like Victorian era, so we're looking at 1800s. Yeah, 1890 that one says over there. Blackwell. So I didn't mention earlier, but this graveyard or this cemetery is 50 acres. That's how big it is, and we've probably covered maybe one of those. Yeah, it's just so, the scale of this place is huge. You think about how many people are buried here. Look at that. You can't really see it on the camera, but there's just graves all over, just in the trees. Okay guys, so if you look here, we've actually located a place which was our only lead. We saw a picture online and it was of this exact location, which we've actually found now. Henry Cooper Turner. A light from our household gone, a voice we loved is stilled. A vacant place is in our home which never can be filled. His sufferings are over, may he rest in peace. Yeah, and then the rest of his family on his. So this is like a family tomb, and yeah, it seems this guy was suffering. Yeah, 1893 he died. So yeah, we're just looking at the graves in this area, and we're just going to have to hope that one of the picture we saw was right. That's the Baldwins. As I'm looking, I like to take it. Oh, you Anyway, as I was saying before that happened, is I like to take a second to sort of read the graves, sort of think about the sort of people that are in there, just to sort of pay a bit of respect. But yeah, I did have a look at the all of those graves, and none of them were the one we're looking for. So we're just gonna have to carry on looking around. Look, that's one big tomb. There's probably a few people buried there. It's got no plaque at all on it. It's just, yeah. I don't even know how you can get round, because I don't really want to walk across the tomb, because I think that's a bit disrespectful. So right in the middle of the graveyard we have this big Gothic structure like that. And that's the chapel, and we actually got to go earlier underneath it to the catacombs, and has a little guided tour, and I'll put a little section of that in later. But I'll go into the chapel now. Right guys, welcome to the chapel. So the first thing you're going to notice is these ceramic sculptures that are lining the walls. These were created by an artist called Billy Weston. What I'll do is I'll stick his link in the description so you can go and check out his website. He's got quite an interesting story, so I'd definitely recommend that. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll stick in some clips here of the chapel, the grounds and the crypts as well. And I've got some extra footage of the crypt which I'll put at the very end of the video so the people that want to watch it can. And yeah, and right after this little sequence we'll jump straight back into the search for Jack the Ripper.
Modern copies, they were about 17 or so years old. You know that was original. The vandals didn't get into that. That's a lead coffin. You don't want to get into a lead coffin.
Look, check this out. We've got Alfred Shearman. Look, this one is CLA Newitt, the King's Own Royal Regiment. November 1941, age 35. So that must have been a war hero. Look, we've got these massive marble ones like this. You probably can't see on the camera how big it is, but family grave of Wanderen. Some of the letters have come off, but that's about as tall as me, that is. You probably can't tell on the camera, but that's about how big it is. Yeah. You've got big graves like this, and there's little ones. I mean, look at that. That's a grave, and it's just covered. Absolutely covered. And we've got an opening over here with, look, loads more graves just in the Louisa, the wife of William John Elliot. She fell asleep January 22nd, 1906. So sad. I mean, that was over 100 years ago. 111 years ago. This place just goes to show just how many people have been on this earth before us. 50 acres of graves scattered around. Exactly like this. Swain, August 1900. Wow. Right guys, so me and Taylor, we've been here for a good few hours. We've been searching this place absolutely ages. We've probably only covered a small part of it because of the size of this place. And we haven't found the grave we're looking for. It's disappointing, but we've had a good day still. We've seen something new. But yeah, we're gonna head home. Got a long drive home back from London now, and yeah, just hope you guys have learned a lot about this theory, and remember to let me know what theories you know of. Fill me in on that, and I'm going to keep my eye out on if anyone else finds this grave, or if it comes up on the internet any more leads of where it might be, then I might return and try and find it again, because I'd really love to find it. But yeah, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Right, welcome. This is this is the crypt of what is the Anglican chapel here at Nunhead. There were originally two. There was a smaller but otherwise relatively similar chapel towards the bottom of the hill, the Dissenters' Chapel for non-Anglicans. That one was demolished in the 1950s, having been bombed in the war. This one was always the larger, the more impressive of the two chapels, and obviously had the prime spot on the top of the hill. The building dates from 1844 and was designed by an architect called Thomas Little. He had won a competition in the Builder magazine a few years before for the commission for the cemetery, and he did other ecclesiastical buildings in the country. Now, the chapel actually opened 4 years after the cemetery. The London Cemetery Company opened the cemetery in 1840. They also owned a smaller cemetery somewhere in, I think, Highgate. Anyway, this was always intended to be this was always the larger one. It's 52 acres at Nunhead. It was always intended to be the more prestigious one, and I think it probably was until a certain Mr. Marks arrived at Highgate. After that, things changed. And of the prestigious places you could be, this was the most prestigious place you could be buried in Nunhead Cemetery. It was the most expensive place. Because a bit like a parish church, you wanted to be close to the altar, which obviously would have been above you, and down here, when there was a roof, it would have been dry, so that was meant to preserve your body, which we will come to. So as to why the building is the way it is now, run through a quick history of the cemetery company. As I said, founded in 1840, probably as a private company, so making a profit. Does that probably for about 110 years. But after the First World War, the amount of money people spend on their funerals drops dramatically. The attitude to death changes completely. The Victorian period, there was at least one department store on Regent Street that just sold stuff for funerals. That's all it did. So that's just how big they were. It was very important you had a very good funeral. Even the poor would have put away a couple of pennies every week because there was a serious social stigma to not having a good funeral. You had to be the best, do the best you could. So after the First World War, that's changed. The amount of money the cemetery company is making drops. By the time you get to after the Second World War, the cost of labour has gone up so much. By the 1950s, they're not doing as much maintenance and nature begins to take over. And then by 1969, basically the cemetery company's gone bust. They shut the gates at the bottom of the hill, and they leave all their records in the staircase there, which were in a bit of a state by the time they were found. But they walk away in 1969 and just abandon the site. That time, 1970s, the Vandals get in. It's Victorian architecture, so no one cares because it's about 70 years old. No one cares about that sort of thing. And therefore, at some stage, the Vandals get in here and scatter the bodies out of the coffins, all over the floor, hoping to find interesting things worth nicking. They might have got some interesting diseases, but they wouldn't have actually found anything worthwhile, because Victorians are not buried with their worldly goods, they're not the Vikings. And if you were a Victorian woman, if you had jewellery, it wouldn't be with you. It would either have gone to your daughter if you had one, or it might well have gone back to your husband if you didn't, so it certainly wouldn't have been with you here. So after that happened, the cemetery company having given up, the site was acquired by Southwark Council for £1 in 1976. They've actually had to change the law by Act of Parliament to do that. And one of the things they did is they buried the entrance there at the back, so you can't come in. And then everything else is just left. Fast forward a couple of decades or so, you've got the Friends are founded in 1981, and they start doing conservation work in the cemetery a few years after that. And then in 2000, thereabouts, there's a Heritage Lottery grant which is intended to stabilise this building that the arsonists have got at as the ruin it is now, and stabilise the walls against the rain, that sort of thing. At that time, they come in and they put chaps in spacesuits, come and put all the bodies back into modern coffins. So you've got about 50 loculi down the wall here. That's the plural loculus, or that is what the niche is. And there's another 2 dozen or so there. Now, they are modern coffins. They're about 17 or so years old. Marine ply, even now, down here, because it's so damp, doesn't survive very well. The other 3 have hidden the coffins, let's just say, they're slightly past their best. We do have at least one of all the coffins that were mucked about with, but that one there is an original. You know that was original, and the Vandals didn't get into that. That's a lead coffin. You don't want to get into a lead coffin. The theory is, and if you're a very rich Victorian, which will come to the price of it in a minute, you want to be in a lead coffin because it's very important, as I said, that you are in as good a condition as you can be when you meet your Lord on the Day of Judgment. And the theory of the lead coffin is that it preserves your body perfectly because there's no air in there. It doesn't. You just rot anaerobically, so don't think about it. But if you are rich enough to afford 21 guineas for your loculus and another 5 guineas to actually be interred, which is enough money to bury your entire family of 4 or 6 in an earth grave outside, it's a very expensive thing to do, you would have put your lead coffin that you've dutifully had your body interred in inside an oak coffin so that it looks good for the funeral. You don't care how heavy it is because you're not carrying it. And then that oak coffin would have been wrapped in a sombre coloured velvet. It may have been black, may have been purple, may have been maroon, which is a sombre colour. Now, if you're really going to town as you would have been with your funeral, in theory, but this didn't happen, didn't it? You'd have laid your coffin out with your grieving relatives in the octagon around you, and this metal plate was intended to be a lift. You would have been lowered straight down, turned through 90 degrees by some workmen and put into your very expensive loculus.